Welcome into this edition of Inside Bronchbuster Athletics. I'm Mike Pilosof, the Sports Information Director. Each week we've talked to different coaches. We've talked to Director of Athletics, Greg McVay. This week, kind of change gears a little bit, and I bring in the Commissioner of the Jayhawk Conference, Heinrich. Carl, appreciate the time.
Not a problem. Look forward to visiting with you and the Bronchbusters of Western Kansas.
You know, I know everybody's been busy, you specifically, and tell everybody right now how things have changed really with your job per se in the last, let's say, 30 days.
Well, I tell you, it is uncharted waters that we've been dealing with, and it seems to change day to day. And serving as chair of the eligibility committee as well, I've been very active and having a lot of meetings, Zoom meetings, some of them 2 to 3 hours long, just trying to decipher the difference between allowing our student athletes that didn't get their season in the spring sports in the spring of 2020, and what are we doing for them? What are we going to allow them to do? Athletic eligibility, but you've got the academic eligibility that goes all along with that, and then the transferability to NCAA or NAIA schools. There's a lot of details that have gone into, and every time our eligibility committee meets, we find something else that we have to address regarding that. And it's been beneficial for our conference to be on the eligibility committee, because we do get some firsthand insight on what's taking place. But it has been extremely busy. Got a really good eligibility staff made up of athletic directors or / commissioners across the United States. And we have 520 schools, and it's different actions at each school, from New York to the Midwest to Arizona. Everybody's got different issues that they're dealing with, or time frames of what their state or region or county has impacted rules or stuff that's going on. So we're all over the board right now, and we're doing the best that we can. And the most important thing is to try to take care of our student athletes that didn't get an opportunity to participate this past spring or right now.
You mentioned the layers of eligibility, and I want to bring this up, and you can maybe expand on this because of some of the things you've already pointed out. But there's so many layers to eligibility. It's not just bringing everybody back. Some of these student athletes will have exhausted some of their financial aid because there's only certain time periods that they're allowed for that. And I know that this is the NAIA, this is the NJCAA, this is the NCAA all coming together with this ruling. But how many different variables are in play when it comes just specifically to eligibility because of the spring student athletes losing that semester and then now, in essence, gaining it back because of the rule?
Well, you're absolutely right. NAIA rules aren't the same as NCAA Division I, or even the difference between NCAA Division II and III. And so what we try to do is we try to protect our athletes so they are going to be eligible to transfer to any one of those 4 different type programs that they might go into. You try to be restrictive. Now, the academic eligibility by both the NAIA and NCAA has said that they will accommodate our student athletes, but they didn't change their eligibility rules, their academic eligibility rules, or athletic. In other words, if you're going to an NCAA Division I school, you have 5 years to get 4 years in. That isn't changed, but they have they will allow schools to appeal any cases that may affect our student athletes from this semester. But you still have the 5th semester rule where they transfer. They have to declare their major and 50% of their classes have to be in their field. So we've made some adjustments academically to maybe allow those students to come back and only enroll in 6 hours, where they could possibly online enroll in 6 in their field of their major. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things like that. There's things like, are we going to be able to get physicals for these student athletes for this fall? And then, you know, we talk about the student athletes in the spring sports this past spring, and they didn't get their year in. But you've also got the fall sports, the volleyball players, the football players, all them that have to second season participation, where our rule is you have to have 24 hours of 2.0, and they didn't get a full semester this spring to possibly achieve that. So we've incorporated 18 hours instead of 24 for this one-time event. And, you know, so there's accommodations that we're trying to make. And some schools have great online resources that they've been able to implement to get through this. But then there's other schools, as a reference, Bunker Hill in Boston is an inner city school, and they might not have the accommodations of having laptops or being afforded the opportunity to go to a library to get online and do their classes. So like I said before, it's all over the board, and we're trying to be as accommodating and think of those students first in all scenarios.
For those that don't know your background, you spent nearly 2 decades at Johnson County. In the time that you've been involved in this conference, maybe not on this level with this pandemic, can you remember a time when there was such uncertainty, not only within just this conference, but within college athletics in general?
No, this, like I said earlier, this is uncharted waters, that we're dealing with issues that have never been seen before by anyone. You know, I spoke with Bryce Roderick and people across the nation, Art Becker from Arizona, who was our former president of the NJCAA, and nobody, I mean, there is not a precedent set that we can go by. Everything is created from new, and we're doing the best that we can. And again, we're going to get through this, and the students are going to have their opportunities. I feel really sorry for high school seniors that didn't get their seasons in, and now they're going to be competing against maybe fifth-year seniors at four-year schools or third-year sophomores at community colleges. And they can't go back and get their senior season back. And, you know, that's really sad. I've got a good friend that is a softball coach at Free State High School, and they had back-to-back state championship years, and looking forward to a three-peat, and it's not going to happen. And I feel sorry for those girls that don't get that chance. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
When we look forward now to the fall, and again, we've talked about so much uncertainty with everybody that I've talked with, including you. But now, as you guys are trying to plan, I know the NJCAA came down with really 3 specific scenarios. You can either start on time, you can delay it, or you can cancel the fall season altogether. Is there kind of a feeling within the conference right now? Is it still too early of which direction this might go?
Well, I put a ad hoc committee together, made up of the region directors, and we were, as of yesterday, we had met and talked about the what ifs and what direction. And we've looked at what the governor has said and her 4 phases that she's trying to implement to get things back to normal. And you know, the scary part, Mike, is the second wave thing that they keep talking about. If we move too quick and get people involved, then we're going to be dealing with a second wave that could have more impact than the primary wave that came through. So we have to be careful of those kind of decisions and what we're doing. We're trying to deal with consistency across our conference. And, you know, if let's say Johnson County can't bring their students back on campus, but Seward and Garden City and Dodge City can bring their students back on campus, how's that going to have an impact on our conference and the games and matches for this fall? Again, it's kind of a wait and see where we're at in you know, middle of June. And that would take it into the fourth phase of the governor's thing of phasing out and getting back to complete normalcy. I mean, there's a gradual, you know, group that gets together at 10, and then they're expanding in phase 2 to 30, and then phase 3 is 90. And how do those phases impact those that could catch the virus? And then hopefully get back to normal. I don't think we'll ever get back to normal. And even if we get to the phase out part of the governor's thing, it may be wearing masks and you can't participate. The unfortunate thing, you know, is athletics is really the toy department of life. You know, our lives that we live are the most important things that we have to take into consideration. The game's extremely important to all of us in what we do, but you know, lives do matter, and we have to be careful of the decisions that we make moving forward.
In addition to that, and obviously the safety of the student athletes comes first, but do you envision, in just from this coming from the commissioner, that we will have some sort of fall season, whether it's football only or whatever it is? Do you envision that actually happening at this point?
I think it will. Now, I think the coaches won't be in their norm, meaning, you know, they might not get to practice the way that they've always practiced, or the time element. I mean, they already got most of them got their spring games and, you know, the spring part of it taken away from them. And so the evaluation process of the student athletes that they're dealing with is already changed, of who they're anticipating, you know, getting to make the team and try out, or however they do things in the past. They're going to have to get probably a little bit creative in how we move forward in what we do. Preparation time, you know, volleyball might not get to start August 1st. It may be the middle of August, the latter part of August. If, you know, there's been talk with the NCAA about football moving to the spring. Well, they've got a little different economic status than most of us have, but how in the world would we do football, volleyball, soccer, along with baseball, softball, track, everything in the spring, and for transportation purposes? I mean, it would almost have to be Mondays or volleyball matches. Tuesdays would be baseball and maybe softball. Football would be Sundays that you have to play your games on. And then you get into the factor of rainouts and makeups, and, you know, do we shorten the season? Do we only play in-state, which has a down on football with our alliance with Iowa? So, you know, every sport has their little niche of what they can and can't do, and you can't hardly play 6 feet apart playing football when you got to tackle somebody. So, you know, volleyball, golf would be one that maybe you could. with a lot of restrictions. It's just hard to tell, Mike. We're living day by day. There are institutions across the nation right now. The Chicago system has canceled their athletic seasons for 2021 already. They've no sports at all. I think it's Sinclair, maybe out of Michigan, has done the same thing. So you're starting to see some schools that are just not going to have sports this next year. We are at this point. That's the last thing in the world we want to do for the Jayhawk Conference, but it is happening across the nation. So that affects your districting, your national championship play. In football, is Mississippi going to be able? Are they doing the same thing? Can Garden City start practicing and Coffeyville can't? Does Coffeyville get only 2 weeks preparation and Garden City gets 4 weeks preparation to play the first game? All unknown entities that are out there. And, are we gonna, as a conference, all or one, all or none? In other words, if somebody doesn't have a team, nobody starts. We don't want to get into that. But those are questions that are still out there that don't have answers to.
All right, before I let you go, give us the biggest takeaway from the region meetings. I know there were certain things, and obviously this was a point of discussion, was the timeline, and there's still so many unknowns, but what was the biggest takeaway in your mind as the commissioner from the region meetings?
Oh my gosh. I'd have to review the notes. What meeting I've been in and which one that I've talked about, it has definitely been a challenge because I'm changing gears all the time. But I don't know. I think the biggest thing is surviving this, and that has to be the number one thing, is where do we go from here, and how do we get through the fall, and taking one day at a time, and trying to do like I said earlier, trying to do the best that we can at what we're doing. So everybody has their agenda. I think probably the biggest item that didn't pass was Mike Calvert from Pratt, the president, put in the conference meeting a requirement of Kansas athletes on each and every one of our sport rosters. That did not pass, but I don't think it's dead yet. I think it's just, I think it needs to be refined a little bit more, and some answers that people, or questions that to those, answer those questions of what if we don't have enough Kansas kids on our rosters? What's a reprimand, and getting some of those things answered, I think would help clarify. It wasn't asking too much. It might be like 6 baseball players and 4 softball players that were from Kansas and that kind of thing. But it does change if we do that, and I think it would. And what I think the president's biggest concerns are is, the economics. Changes that we make can't impact our economics of what we're doing through the state legislators. So we have to be careful of that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that came out of it.
Carl, appreciate the time. Good insight. Thank you very much, sir.
Mike, I appreciate it, and tell everybody out there hello for me, and hopefully I'll get back out to Garden City here and things lift a little bit, and wish you all the best of luck, and be safe, and tell Dr. Ruda and Greg I said hi.
Will do, and please, you and your family stay safe.